But I also want to challenge the notion that Pump did have a blow up off top at all. Pump's share of total crypto revenue is still higher than it was in most of 2024. Today, it peaked at 15% of total crypto revenue. It's down to 12%.
Nothing said on 0x Research is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our opinions, not financial advice. Boccaccio, Ryan, and our guests may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of 0x Research. Today we're here at DAS, the Defense Asset Summit.
The Digital Asset
Summit. Not the Trump one. The other one. We actually came up with the name first. They kind of stole it from us.
Stealing Canada, they're stealing Greenland, they're stealing DAS.
Fun fact to our listeners, Daniel Smith is actually Canadian, so whenever he brings up Canada, you should remember that.
Proud
He's a
US
big
citizen.
Maple Leaf guy.
All right. What are we talking about today, Paco?
I guess, Daniel Smith, you've been here for some time. Ryan, you're relatively new, and I have only been here like 1 year. Dan, how many DASs have you been to?
Second DAS, I think 5th Blockworks conference.
Okay.
Last DAS was DAS London, and I was told it was like a suit-focused conference with a bunch of, bankers and traditional finance businessmen, which it was. But this was, if you remember back to the time of like the Slurf memecoin launching, that happened during the conference, and everybody was talking about it. Like I think every single panel mentioned Bonk. So it was funny. Everybody was wearing fancy clothes and having the exact same conversations you'd have at Permissionless or any of the other more retail or builder-focused conferences.
I will say this one feels a lot more institutional than I've ever felt before. Ryan, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the names are all names that you know from TradFi. I'm pretty impressed with the turnout, super packed. You realize that there's a whole other part of crypto that maybe natives don't really interact with or don't prioritize, like a lot of service providers, private blockchain things, like institutions, like, more institutional facing startups working with banks. It really broadens your horizons.
I was pretty convinced that the only thing that mattered was crypto Twitter, so this is news to me.
Yeah.
This is unironically what I think, so. I will say I felt like what I would have expected would be more like blockchain, not crypto, but that has not been the case at all. People are very happy with crypto. Is this something that you guys also expected, or were you already convinced that this is going?
Because of my experience last year at DAS London, I think my answer was no. I was kind of thinking it would be the same crypto-focused conversations with just a more buttoned-up lens, if you will. People are really excited about changing the world with crypto rails, which is exciting to me. And it's just a good sentiment shift. I feel like the last 6 months have been pretty tough for the true crypto natives. So it's just like it feels like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, the institutions are bullish, I think, definitively. And they don't really know what we know, and probably aren't going to invest in what a lot of crypto native funds would invest in or might toy around with. And I think that that's the reason for the divergence. Like you can be bullish when like you weren't really paying attention to the meme coin downturn and never thought it would be relevant. So your view on crypto would be way different if all you care about is like regulatory clarity, right? So there's just a different narrative on this side of the business.
But let's talk a bit more about what institutions invest in versus what you and I and Dan invest in. By that, do you mean these guys are mostly focused on Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, or is that like you think they're focused more on protocols that make money, not raise?
Protocols that raise money. Yeah, that's what crypto natives are used to.
I think there's very strong evidence that the most relevant assets are Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana in that category, in that order. You see it with, more TradFi institutions, though they will prioritize only those assets to talk about. However, I think there's an increasing chorus of institutional managers that are actually familiar with DePIN because the businesses map to things that they're familiar with and they make real revenues, and like platforms like Blockworks Research are highlighting the fact that these things do make revenues, and that's something that makes it very easy for a traditional institution to get behind. So I see some evidence of that as well. I think that that's super interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like the next hurdle that that we need to make, right? Is I think people are pretty comfortable with those first three assets you listed, and it's about like getting past those three. It's like, okay, we know what we get. I feel like the general intent of what these systems are doing, building these digital on-chain economies where other businesses get built on top, seems pretty compelling, and I think people are comfortable with that idea. The question is like, what are those businesses going to be? All right, right now it's really been focused on trading different assets, but if you read like the Stripe annual letter or PayPal's recent commentary or even any of Robinhood and Vlad Tenev's commentary, there's a lot of exciting things. But I think the unanswered question for me that I'm hoping to prod at throughout the rest of this week is, okay, like let's say Robinhood goes all in on crypto. Like what does that look like? And then what are the implications of that? Because I think my base case right now is they just try to rebuild everything themselves. I think Gwart had the banger tweet of, I think you guys all spent the last 10 years, building open source code that Robinhood's going to take and make a bunch of money with. And then, I've been thinking about that tweet every day since I first read it. And then you see, Coinbase kind of going the more friendly route of depositing or giving users on the platform the ability to deposit into Morpho. They could have built their own Morpho, but instead they used Morpho, which I think is pretty interesting. But then you see Robinhood launching its own like prediction market-esque product with the March Madness contracts that you can trade in platform. And then they built that themselves. They did not leverage Polymarket, right? And so I think that's like an indication of the direction that they're thinking, the direction they want to go. And so like if that happens, then what does that mean for all the other general purpose infrastructure that would want to have that activity being built on top of them, right?
Yeah.
Like Base wants that, Solana wants that. Any blockchain building for activity wants Robinhood to be building on top of them. And like that's this unanswered question that I'm really trying to get deeper on.
Well, it's like, go for it.
And if
Bob.
you're Robinhood, why the hell would you use somebody else's contracts? Like, you can just build it in-house. There's less risk, I assume, because they'll probably have better developers and engineers. So, to me, you want to own the full stack. You want to make as much money as possible. I brought up how much money these pools, especially some of these like trading bots and these terminals take. Somebody from TradFi, and they were like, that's incredible. And I feel like that's how they approach it. Like, if you see 1% fees on a trading bot, and I'm Robinhood, and I'm like, dude, if I just like cut that down to 0.25%, I'm already making billions. Why the hell would I not?
Yeah, our takes are high here, which means someone's going to come and arb them down. A lot of people in this building are kind of realizing that. They might have seen it in 2021, and then Luna happened, FTX happened, they went away. Now they see the take is still there. The industry's on the up and up. It's being legalized, so you have to think that that take comes down. But it stayed it stayed high for a really long time. I think we got a ways to go, but beginning of the end of the high take.
This episode is brought to you by Ledger, the global leader in digital asset security. Celebrating 10 years of innovation, Ledger remains the most secure hardware wallet for your crypto and logins, trusted by 7 million users and securing 20% of the world's digital assets. Follow the link in today's show notes to grab your Ledger now.
I will say I have been slightly worried about DEXs competing against CEXs recently. And I think this kind of ties into the Robinhood thing where if regulation gets a lot clearer and a lot looser, like the thing that I was thinking of was Hyperliquid, because if, let's say there's a lot of US users for Hyperliquid, there shouldn't be, but let's say realistically there is. If not Coinbase is bad, but if Binance launches a perpetuals platform because regulation is looser, then like how the hell does Hyperliquid compete?
You had to throw shade at Coinbase there.
Well, Coinbase is, I will say it here, they hold people's funds hostage. And I've seen a lot of comments about this. So
the question on how they compete, it's all about distribution, I think.
Yeah.
Right? The reason that Robinhood doesn't believe that they need to go to the chain is because they already have the distribution. Or if you don't have the distribution, then you have to go to the chain. Binance, I mean, great point. They have the distribution already. They don't need to go to Hyperliquid or whatever. So it all depends. I think that 2025 is going to be next 24 months. I think are really important for the industry and leadership. Why? Like the U.S. government has is going to legalize crypto. There are a bunch of things with users and installed bases and volume and market makers and service providers and the tools that are right there. So you open the door, and where are these users going to go first? They're going to go to the things where you can already do things. This could solidify. I think it's going to solidify a lot of the most popular products today. It's such a massive advantage, I think.
I will say one thing. I have found that some protocols have started to fumble their lead, and the ones that I'm thinking of are Aave.
Expand, because I was looking at the stats here, and they're still absolutely crushing market share.
I understand that, but I think that Aave spent 12 months, maybe 2 years, building out a SocialFi platform on Polygon.
Okay, so this, I mean,
Wait.
this gets, all right, continue.
This is fantastic. Keep going.
The second thing is that they did some weird corporate restructuring, fine, and now they're launching a second token for Horizon, which is an institutional product. I will say one thing. First of all, Aave should have spent time launching on Solana, because that's a lot of money that they missed out, and they gave a big opportunity to Camino. Second thing is, why the hell are they, instead of Solana, they're launching on Aptos?
Okay, so hold on, lots to unpack here. So one, I think the overarching point here that's interesting to dive into is Aave DAO versus Aave Labs, which is now called like Avara.
Yeah.
So that is, okay, I've been thinking a ton about this. So you mentioned Horizon. I guess quick TLDR, if you're not up to speed here, is Aave Labs, again, I'm just going to keep calling them Labs, but they go by Avara. They proposed to the Aave DAO that, like, hey, we're going to build this more institutional focused product, and we want to license the Aave V4 technology, and we want to create a revenue share that goes back to the DAO for that. When I read that, I was immediately a little bit like frustrated, because if you look at Aave's, they're doing about $75 million a year, trading at about $2.5 billion valuation, right? So there's a ton of growth being priced in here, and I think that's a rational thought process at this point in the product's life cycle, because they are crushing lending market share across many chains. I think they've had some interesting competition arise recently with Morpho, but they're still doing very, very
Euler.
well. And Euler, and but now you see that the Labs entity is not necessarily one-to-one with the DAO, and like, what does that mean? And so they also proposed a new token in this that was very, very aggressively shut down by Mark Zeller and the rest of the DAO, and credit to them for that. So there won't be a new token anymore. Stani already came out and kind of like turned that switch off, but to me, like, that was a symptom of the problem, not the problem.
Yeah.
It was the token, right? The symptom is the Labs entity is going to build new products, and and the revenue will either go to a token, or to the, now without a token, just goes back to the Labs entity.
Yeah.
And so the DAO isn't getting that future revenue stream from this new product, right? It's only getting a revenue share agreement, which I hate. I absolutely hate that. Like, how are we going to have, I don't know. And like, we've chatted about this on Slack over the time, and you had a really interesting point about like, maybe there's an interesting model to experiment with where each product kind of has its own token within a broader umbrella. And actually, remember when Unibot did the Solana token, we talked about the same concept, but just a different product and different, it's hard to compare one-to-one there, but I pitched the same idea, and I like the idea of the experimentation. I hate that it's like one of the 5 things we can point to and be like, this is like a very good example of what seemed to be a semi-functional DAO that has a great market positioning and is going to continue building awesome products. I hate that it was them that have to kind of try and experiment with this. And then one last piece that he was like the icing on the cake of all this, and I might be overreading into like a single line in this comment, but in Mark Zeller's reply, he mentioned that the Aave Labs entity takes about 50% of the total service provider budget from the DAO, and that's to do great work and everything. But he's like implied or suggested that part of that was used to fund the creation of Horizon. Right, and so that's like even worse. Now you've funded the creation of the thing you don't get all the revenue of. So I might be overreading into one single line in a comment here, but that's just another interesting angle I had here.
Before I let you speak, Ryan, I will say two things. First of all, I know it's Euler, not Euler. I just said that to piss off Westy, so math people don't come at me. The second thing is, the issue with Aave is that I think they've kind of gotten this average bid just because, like you said, they're like a semi-working protocol that you can show and say, hey, look, we have lending on the blockchain, and it's like a fundamental play. But realistically, like, have they really done that well? Go was a failure. Umbrella's still
but
not.
You shouldn't be afraid to launch and fail products.
You shouldn't, but you should also launch one good product.
Then they have that with
What?
the lending. The core lending
Yes.
infrastructure is
Since-
solid.
But they've had one since 20 when it was.
Well, they've built V4 that's coming to market.
Okay.
And I guess I'd push back a little bit on myself and say that I'm a recent Morpho user and I absolutely love the product. I can basically put up my funds in a vault that Steakhouse or Gauntlet or some other money manager manages, and I don't have to do anything. I pay them a small fee and I get my yield. That is a much better product than me having to do that myself.
Yeah.
So I will say that the industry is kind of trending in that direction, and it's not something they support today.
Governance structures in crypto typically suck.
Yeah.
The labs versus foundation or team model has always been, I think, fraught with conflicts of interest. The first time I noticed that in my time spent in crypto was DYDX, when I believe the equity was taking fees that should have gone to the DAO, or there's some controversy over it. Going back to the thing about like incumbents and, whether or not they can get disrupted as we see this like large influx of users. The interesting thing about crypto is that there are a ton of incumbents that deny that they are a useful money making entity and that they need to behave like a company and defend their moats. So the interesting thing is, like, although there is this force of capital coming that should solidify some market positioning of some very dominant teams, some of these teams and their governance structures are fraught with conflicts of interest and things that can take them down. Perhaps Aave is an example there. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert. They've clearly, there's been some questions there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think as an investor, you want to identify the teams that are taking it seriously in this very moment and separate from the teams that are not, as this influx of capital comes in.
And I guess one more piece real quick, Baco, is the Aave situation is honestly it's pretty close to what MakerDAO is intentionally doing, where you push the more risky, risk-taking ventures off to what they called sub-DAOs that are now like stars, and Spark is the example of that here, right? It makes a lot of money for itself, but the key difference is that it's perpetuating the success of USDS, which is the underlying core business of what MakerDAO wants to do, or Sky Protocol. And that, to me, that's a meaningful distinction between the Aave Horizon and the Aave DAO. Is Horizon was just a 4-year rev share, and then what's done is done.
Yeah.
Which that's just like a sad outlook in my mind.
I will say one thing is I've just been thinking about it just now, what products have failed. Not failed, but are slightly fumbling their lead. And what I could think of was Aave, maybe Uniswap, MakerDAO, etc. But I've also noticed that I might just be annualizing a trend. It's just Solana's just been doing very well, so a lot of Solana apps are getting attention versus I'm sure if Ethereum and the L2s were doing well. So I don't know if I'm reading into it too much.
A very interesting filtering mechanism is just looking at the teams that refuse to go to base in Solana.
Yeah.
I think that's a very easy one. So you start to question the execution cadence of those teams. There are a few that come to mind. We don't have to name them. But.
Yeah, especially since Solana lasted for so long. I'd imagine if it was a free month, I don't expect people to launch on.
It's not like Harmony last
Sui or
cycle,
something,
right?
yeah.
It's not a flash in the pan.
Yeah. It's been there for a year and a half.
Ledger is the global leader in digital asset security, trusted by 7 million users and securing 20% of the world's digital assets. In recent years, Ledger has built a comprehensive ecosystem of products and services, making digital ownership more secure and accessible for everyone. Ledger's newest devices, Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, introduce the world's first secure touchscreens, making it easier and safer to manage your transactions and assets. Alongside Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, they have also launched the Ledger Security Key app, offering a safer alternative to traditional passwords and enhancing your digital security. Follow the link into today's show notes to get started with Ledger today. Have you been getting silly on chain this year, farming on 10 plus wallets across different ecosystems? Well, CryptoTaxCalculator is here to help. CryptoTaxCalculator has 3,000 plus integrations to support all of your wallets, exchange accounts, and on-chain activity, and a custom pricing oracle to handle even the most chaotic portfolios. Get started today and make tax season easy. You can use our exclusive discount code BW2025 to enjoy 30% off all paid CTC plans until April 15th of this year. Follow the link in the show notes below to get started.
I wanted to ask about one more thing, but it wasn't related to this. Do you guys have anything you want to chat about, or do you want to give me a second? Are you done? You're leaving? What's this contentious thing that we talked about this week?
Contentious?
Yeah, it was like intense. Dude, I forgot.
A pump fund is still over 10% of all app revenue in
This
crypto.
is literally what I want to talk about. Okay. Dan, what would you say is your position on this? Because I want to fight.
Wait, what's the
Ryan.
position?
Well, my position is
So
that
we have to state the.
Yeah, what's the
Yeah.
claim?
Okay.
What's the
Okay.
claim?
My belief is that, and I'm saying this on the pod, which won't be great, but I will say, I believe that the meme coin season that we had on Solana, and this is why I brought this up to Lucas, and he looked at me like I was an idiot, but basically we're annualizing this like Solana meme coin activity, and it might just go away. I want to preface this.
Can
before-
you
before
can you annualize something that's gone on for 18 months?
No, I'm gonna take the single week that Trump token launched
Dude,
and annualize
oh
the
my
150
God, you
million.
get
That's what I do in all my models.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't know.
literally what you do. What I basically want to say is this: I think
Someone's
that
gonna be serious. That was a joke.
podcast is done. It's
This
over.
is-
No,
it's
what I
canceled.
wanted to say is the meme coin activity that we've seen on Solana with PumpFun and like all of it, I think it will not come back in the form that it is at right now. As in, there will be a material shift in the form and the dynamics that exist today. I believe that it is too, I'm gonna say extractive. Don't get upset with me, but it is the PumpFun version of meme coins is too extractive. I don't think meme coins will die, but I do think that we will see that form, that dynamic, that structure die out. And Ryan Connor believes that it won't, and that everything will constantly be the same, and there will be no changes whatsoever. That's it. No, that's your official position.
Well, it's probabilistic, right? So, I mean, if I were to, okay, so what we're trying to frame is like, will Pump Fund live on?
No.
So, like,
Not will PumpFun live on. I believe that PumpFun will not live on to the extent that it lived on. Like, I believe that Libra was a blow off top for it. It might not die, but logically, to me, it feels like that's like, well, Trump was the blow off top. Libra's like
And
Yeah.
knife in the back.
knife in the back, and then maybe it'll be like dominant still because it is a cool product and meme coins won't die, but it won't be the same as what we had before, and that's why I believe that it's a mistake to say priority fees are always going to be very good. That's the SIMD 228 conversation. We don't need to get back into it, please.
I think that I think Pump is objectively the most successful product in the history of crypto.
Hyperliquid.
I think that, well, from a revenue perspective,
Yes, agreed.
yeah. So I think that, and just given what I see in U.S. gambling markets, like I think that there's staying power for an app like Fun, or like Pump. Would like if you were to give me odds on whether or not Pump Fund volumes will hit record highs within the next 12 months, I'd probably take it. Like whatever, yeah, I'd probably.
I would
take
not
it.
take it. Would you take it?
Because the
Trump highs.
the interesting thing about like if we're talking single day, monthly, or something like, let's call it monthly volumes.
Let's
I
say
would,
January 2025, the Trump highs.
of that month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would bet that over the next 12 months you will see a higher month.
Okay. I
Oh,
would
that's
bet against
spicy.
that. What would you say?
I feel like you'd have to give me juicy odds for me to take that bet.
Dude, if the United States president launched a coin and you think that they can beat that?
Can, yes. My base case, no.
The interesting thing about like just like my last 15 years of like making bets in markets is that when everyone believes one thing, typically the opposite happens. And right now, like this is the consensus view.
So if I take your side right
sitting
now,
in this
then
sitting in this middle seat is the consensus view. and I think it's like if you were to do like a very silly like investment strategy but simple cadence, you could just fade consensus, and I think that you would do pretty okay. Like you might generate some alpha over some periods. And just given like the historical success, the embedded distribution, the fact that there are like 15 to 30 million Solana wallets in like US consumer pockets, the fact that like gambling in the US is so prevalent and it's like at the tip of your fingers and people love it, the fact that meme coins really lower the barrier to gambling and like make it fun and silly. And I think it's really funny when people get rugged on on coins with silly names.
You know, he keeps messaging me stuff, and he's like, "Dude, I got rugged on like this coin. Isn't that funny?" And I'm like, "No, it's not."
He gives me an update like once a week on this one token that he bought. He's like, all right, 99.96, 99.97. He's trying to hit a new high score.
Because if you look at something like Barstool Sports, right, the whole shtick of Barstool Sports is like we are all so bad at gambling and we all make fun of each other and it's like a funny thing, and it's a very U.S. centric behavior, but like that is the biggest capital market, right? That's like the most disposable income. So I wouldn't bet against it. I under most odds I wouldn't bet against it. Yeah.
So I have like a similar view, but a bit of a different reason that underlies it. So I feel like I've gone on this rant on this podcast before, so I'm going to do the abbreviated version. But Dogecoin to NFTs to meme coins to what, right? And so like, will meme coins, will the same activity take the same exact form that we saw last cycle on? I said last cycle that we saw the last year on Solana. You know, my gut says no, but like, you know, who's better capitalized to take advantage of the meta change or be the driver of that change than somebody like PumpFun, who is sitting on a stockpile of cash to go experiment and iterate. They've launched mobile apps. They've built some new on-chain infrastructure. They're clearly not just like rolling over and saying, all right, that was fun.
That is true.
Thanks for the hundreds of millions. Like, all right. And then if you think about last cycle when this rolled over, there was so all the NFT activity was obviously on Ethereum, and OpenSea was like
rolling over,
had its problems, and you know, maybe you can say like a lot of that was regulatory focused. They couldn't really launch a token, but that's probably being generous. Now they're kind of coming back and trying to revive that, but like that ship feels like it has sailed. So I think that there's an interesting angle for, like, do I think that the on-chain speculation or the on-chain gambling sector is dead? Absolutely not. Do I think it'll look exactly like it's looked over the last 12 months? No, that doesn't seem.
That's my argument. It
Yeah,
won't
things
look
change.
the same as it was
But that's
before.
okay, right?
But how?
No change.
It's already starting to look different, right? Look
Yeah.
at Zora. I'm very intrigued by what they're doing. All right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The Solana ad, for example, didn't go over so hot. For probably good reason. Tweet gets deleted, and then somebody minted it on Zora. They downloaded the video before and then minted it on Zora. It did like I think about $1 million of trading volume, and the creator made $1,500.
That's not that good.
I mean, for just like downloading and uploading a video on a platform that's like relatively underused right now. So you're already starting. My point here is like not that this was a huge moment, but more so is that you're already seeing a shift in the view and but the use of meme coins in products, right? And that's what this is. You're tokenizing a post. That's the same thing as a meme coin.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so sure. Yeah, I guess I am arguing for no. I'm not really arguing for no change. I mean, like, PumpFun is an infinite game.
You're taking the European stance. Do you realize that right now? You're saying no innovation, no frontier. We're gonna keep the exact same thing.
I do think that there's a high probability that leaders will be cemented, but I do think that Pump is like an infinite game. Like, are you saying that like technology hasn't changed because like most tech platforms like have like infinite scroll, or like that like the content at Instagram isn't changing? Like, Instagram is a platform for like constantly evolving content. I think Pump is that same thing. So like so we're thinking about probabilities of how things may change. Like you have a primitive within crypto where like you can have the game constantly evolve within it, and I think that could be Pump.
Yeah.
And the associated infrastructure.
I agree, and I'm also intrigued to watch how other chains try to throw their hat in the ring here. You saw a PumpFun clone launch on every single blockchain over the last 12 months. Nothing. Nobody got anywhere close. Which honestly doesn't make a ton of sense.
Well, maybe, I mean, Base is now...
Yeah, they've got Clanker, they've got Zora.
They're about 20,000 launches off from where Pump is way down, Clanker is a little bit up, and they're about, like, the token launches today or within the last few days are like 20,000 off.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's pretty good.
Shout out Jacob.
The weekly
on
hasn't
the
eclipsed
data
yet, but
team.
the dailies in the last like 3 or 4 days, there's been like alternating between more tokens launched on Base and PumpFun.
That's pretty good.
So you're seeing some of this, and that always made sense, right? Like, where was all the activity in the last 12 months? There was really 2 chains, Base and Solana. And now I'm like really trying to figure out if you're going to see someone else get their hat in the ring meaningfully. And then, you know, given that we're at DAS and the talk of the town is sort of RWA, is like, if you think about all of the activity happening on chain and like these meme coin trading and whatnot, and you replace that with like a less shit asset, you probably get a pretty exciting
Yeah.
landscape. And so how can we bring more exciting assets on chain? Like imagine if every PumpFun token was like, whether it be like a startup they were taking a bet on, that's like most of the project tokens we see in the industry today, or something like tokenized Anthropic equity.
Yeah.
Or
If you could
just-
short Ryan Connor.
or if you can short Ryan Connor.
Short by time.
Yeah.
That's true. Time.fun.
But I also want to challenge the notion that Pump did have a blow up off top at all. Pump's share of total crypto revenue is still higher than it was most of 2024. Today, it peaked at 15% of total crypto revenue. It's down to 12%.
Okay.
Aerodrome's share of crypto revenue has taken more of a hit than Pump's.
That's actually pretty
I'm
fascinating.
really upset you brought up Aerodrome because now we're gonna have the Aerodrome guys get upset at us on Twitter. Do you realize?
We like the Aerodrome team, and I like what they're building. They're good, and they've done a great job of taking market share in base. But if you believe that meme coins are dead, well, why has like Aave revenue declined to a similar degree?
I agree.
That question has to be answered by the meme coins are dead people, and it can't be because we have the data, and it turns out all these things fell concurrently, like in proportion.
Yeah,
to
I think
another.
that's everyone always points to the fact that on-chain revenues are so cyclical because everything's tied to like the same waves. That's why you're so excited about GeoNet and other deep in projects, because they can actually have a meaningful shot at breaking this.
Yeah.
I want to ask one last question and then we can be done because I know you guys are very busy. You can bet on 2 chains except for Solana. What would they be?
So base and. I feel like it should be not base and not Solana because.
Okay, not base and not Solana.
Yeah.
What would they be?
I know my answers.
If Arbitrum would put some effort into scaling throughput, I'd be very, very excited.
You know what? I talked to Steven on the pod last week, and
I need to listen to that app.
It's very good. I mean, all my podcasts are great, but that one
That's
was
true.
particularly great. I will say he talked about how the 20 millisecond block times. I was shocked. I did not know Arbitrum was that fast.
Yeah,
And to me, it
fast,
seems-
but if there's more than 30 TPS,
Yeah, that's true. It
see
goes up like
meaningful
$5.
transaction spikes or transaction fee spikes, and that's the problem that I'm trying to rattle with. They're also
Arbitrum?
launching Time Boost soon. And they've launched this on-chain initiative. What is it called? On-chain Labs.
On-chain Labs.
From Off-chain Labs.
Yeah.
Which is
Zero
really just like an
X Pibbles
accelerator.
worked on that one.
Yes, he did. And the man is cooking. So I think there's pretty interesting things happening in that ecosystem. And then Aptos and Sui definitely have strong tech.
You got to pick one. We said 2 in total. You picked Arbitrum. What's the second one?
Sui because I like AirTX.
That's fair. Yeah, that's true.
Binance and Aptos.
BNB chain, build and build chain. Very good. And Aptos?
Okay, BNB's doing
BNB
some
is
really
very
interesting
interesting.
stuff. They also have a MEV system that I don't think anybody has really paid any attention to. I'm pulling some of that data right now, but Das took the front seat of that, so maybe next time I'm on the pod, we can chat about the BNB MEV scene.
I don't get you on the pod. You know that. Danny gets you.
Yeah, I'll go to Danny's episode and talk
You
about it
should
there.
bring it up to him. Why BNB chain?
Binance has showed staying power, and in this new regulatory regime, it's going to have even more staying power. You see,
That's a good point.
Binance has really solidified itself as like somewhere in the top 5 at any given time. You really can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
It has a stronghold on the Asian markets, and CZ is back, and he's concentrating his efforts on the chain and not the exchange because he's not allowed to with the exchange. So I think it's just with the stronghold that it has on Asia, and the more I learn about that market, the more exciting Binance is. Now, like, does it stay a circus forever? Like, maybe. And I think 2 years ago, I would have said that that's really bad. And now that I've seen these markets evolve and the staying power that a circus has, I think it gives a chain the best shot at like becoming something bigger and better. So I think that Binance is a force to be reckoned with, BNB. And I think Aptos, I don't know, you're starting to see like it turn around over there. There's an increased focus on Move, which is good. Sui is like obviously the leader there. However, the Move language, I honestly think like a silly little catchphrase in crypto can like change like the future of a chain.
Sideline.
Yeah, seriously. Like that was like the most fantastic
That was so
piece
funny. I
of
can't
crypto
believe that
native
happened.
marketing I've ever seen. Like, and I would expect that if the team grabs that and runs with it, like you can really make something happen. So like,
When life gives you lemons.
yeah.
Yep. That was so funny that it happened to Felix. In case you guys wanted to ask me, I believe that it will be Bitcoin and Hyperliquid.
Hyperliquid EVM.
The
Yeah.
audience will love that you have said Hyperliquid 6 times this episode.
Very good. And we didn't even talk about it once. I will say I did give one valid criticism of it, which was the Binance Perpetuals potentially launching there. I'm sure it'll be
You did.
fine, but I think that's like a valid thing to
Yep.
be concerned about.
Yeah, we haven't seen a ton of traction on the Hyper EVM, and it just feels like it's going to get lost in
Can
the
I
sea
give
of
my take on
chains.
that?
Yeah, please do.
I think that Hyperliquid doesn't need a fantastic L1. I don't think it needs NFTs. I think all it really needs is a way to make more collateral, like bring in more collateral onto the L1,
Reasonable.
the trading L1, which is, so it needs LSDs, lending, borrowing, maybe like tokenized vaults, which I know there's a bunch of teams working on. I don't think it needs gaming. I don't think it needs NFTs, which I feel like a lot of other chains need. The one thing is that you definitely want some form of a meme coin generation thing, and we haven't had that yet. But we haven't had that in any chain. So, and it is a bit slow, but I don't know. We'll see. It's early.
Yeah.
I won't.
There's just a lot of competition in the
Yeah.
new chain space, right?
Yeah.
You got them, you got Monad, you have
Mega ETH,
Barachain,
Unichain.
Mega ETH, Unichain, Fogo,
Inc.
Atlas. Yeah, Inc is haven't heard much about them, but
Yep.
um,
Kraken is one of those things that you only really think about when you don't want to be thinking about it, which is like when you have to take money out. And
Can't use it. Based in New York.
rip.
Don't know.
can you use it?
I don't know. I'm just a proud Coinbase user, so I don't know.
Are you actually? They're gonna hold your money hostage.
They
man.
don't hold my money hostage. They seem to like me. I like the platform.
This.
That's ease of use.
If you're an influencer, you can get your money off. If you're not, you can't.
That's a compliment. Thank you.
Very
Did
good.
you have a problem with Coinbase recently?
No, I've seen a lot of people have
Oh,
it,
I
and
read
I've
it
had
on Twitter, so it's got to be true.
I have friends
Okay.
who've had problems. Do you know?
No, I've had problems.
Yes, I am aware.
It's I mean it's probably I don't know I assume money changing in the U.S. is like harder than anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't think it's malicious. It gets painted as this because that's what crypto Twitter does. But I don't know. They're like, I don't think they want to be dealing with all these customer complaints. I don't know. Seems like the sensationalism of Twitter strikes again, if you ask me.
And I love.
I would be pissed if
Twitter
my money
drama,
got locked
so.
in, like locked up.
Very
And it
good.
does happen.
You actually have more. You have to be more conservative as Coinbase than any other money transmitter because you're dealing with a separate money transmission system that you can't revert the transaction.
Yeah. that's
Like
true.
everyone else, you can like talk it out. Once they send the money out, like they are a hotbed for like
Well, that's why they're
this
adding,
attack where you mismatch the time difference on the transfer.
That's why they're adding KYCing to base.
Stop.
That's not true. That was a joke.
All right, send us home.
Are we done?
I think we're done.
Ryan, Daniel, thanks so much for coming on this live 0x Research Pod. If you're at DAS, please come and say hi to us. If you're not at DAS, you can come to Permissionless, which is in June in Brooklyn. Daniel,
Give me a
will you
banger.
invite people? Ryan, you as well. Will you please invite
Yeah,
people?
join us. It's gonna be fun.
That's your camera, right?
I don't,
June 22nd to June 26th, Brooklyn.
Yep.
look at that. Already got the
Industry
dates
City.
and
I will
everything.
be a
My
lot
man's
more
legend.
comfortable there as well. So,
It's by the water.
is it?
Yeah.
We're by the water too. We got this beautiful view. Is that the Hudson?
This one's by the water too.
We can afford the water.
Is the Hudson on that side or the east side, or is it both? Probably a dumb question. It's our tech got us hooked up, so we're good. It's the west side.
West side.
Do you guys ever think about how we've lost complete sense of how we understand directions and stuff because of our reliance on phones? Like you don't know where north is.
Not the
and-
only thing we've lost reliance on.
That's true.
No, I know north, south, and east and west.
Where's north?
North
That
is that way.
Well, we're in a very grid-built city, so it's
Yeah.
pretty easy.
Oh, that's fair. I don't know. Whatever.
All right. Join the 0x Research Telegram chat.
Yep.
If you made it this
Can you
far,
read
you're
out the
probably
link?
already in there.
All right.